Hello, sinners. I just wanted to drop in and tell you that My Horror Confessional is now part of the Ghoulish Podcast Network. In addition to producing podcasts, Ghoulish is also a publisher. Ghoulish Books has published dozens of horror books that have gone on to receive award recognition and even film adaptation treatments. Browse their spooky offerings over at ghoulish.rip and use discount code CONFESSIONAL for 10% off your order. And remember, ghouls, live spooky, die spooky. Hello, everyone. My name is Miguel Myers. Welcome to My Horror Confessional, where every week I'll have a guest come on and talk about one classic horror movie that they haven't seen and why. We'll discuss the movie, the actors, and probably get off topic quite a bit. Once I believe they have properly atoned, I will absolve them of their horror movie sin. Today in the confessional, we have Kevin Martin, better known as Video Store Kev, owner of the Lobby DVD shop, actor in the last Video Store movie, co-founder of Dedfest Film Festival, and also a drunken DJ. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I'm so excited for it. And you're right. It's has been a long time coming. I actually met you when myself and Zach Chapman, who's been a frequent guest on the show, were selling our book at Fantastic Fest, our comic book that we wrote together called Haunted Rental. And we were selling it there at the Ghoulish Book Festival that put on by my friend Max. And you guys came along, you and your
Tim and Cody, my
friend,
directors. Yeah.
yeah, Tim and Cody came around, and uh, your movie, the last video store, was on our list of movies to watch already, and we went in joking around, completely joking around. We're like, we read the description of the movie, and we're like, we're gonna sue these guys, like it's the same thing, whatever, whatever. But we were actually, was number one, so excited about it. But then you guys came up and were so cool, and and we're just like joking around like some of the similarities of the thing, like great minds think alike. So
Yeah.
in my comic book, or in the book that I wrote with Zach, um these kids go into a video store, like a abandoned video store, and they start getting attacked by the monsters that are coming out of the old VHS tapes. And that was something we've been working on for a while. But you guys, just watching your the movies that you made that kind of led up to the last video store, you guys have been doing this for well over a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my real video store here. Yeah. That was
It, yeah, you're joining us from your actual video store, which I know some of the shorts that you guys were shot there.
yeah.
Was the actual movie The Last Video Store also shot there?
No, no. There's no way I could afford to shut down the real video store for that duration. My store is located in Western Canada in a city called Edmonton. We actually shot it closer to Toronto, in Ontario, just because our producer lived out there, and that we had more equipment to play with. So we rented a sound studio and we rebuilt the entire store on a sound stage to the same dimensions to a certain degree. The biggest difference was we just had to fill it with about 4,000 fake VHS titles, and yeah, it was quite the endeavor, but a lot less stressful from my point of view. So we could like throw shit around and fuck shit up, because every time we shot any of the shorts in my real video store, my anxiety level would get through the roof because the guys are smashing my stuff everywhere, and I'm like, oh my god, how am I going to open up tomorrow? But yeah, it always turned to be cleaner in the end after we did all the real shorts. But yeah, so it was a movie completely based on my story, yet we had to shoot it on the other side of the country. So
Well,
but
it's funny you're talking about your anxiety shooting in your actual store, because there was a scene, I can't remember which short, where somebody steps on a video cassette and you're like, "Hey, that was a like a limited edition
limited.
of." Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much, well, the truth of the matter. I'm like, well, we have I'm sad, but we've sacrificed a lot of VHS tapes over the years. I mean, a ton. Every time we shoot one of these things, it's like, does somebody have some VHS tapes they want to donate to us? Probably ain't getting them back in mint condition. So make sure they're crappy, like infomercial tapes or something. But yeah, the amount of tapes that have been destroyed in my store is it's sad, really. But it's
Yeah.
for the art. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Okay. So let's back up a little bit. So
Mhm.
you're the owner of the
Yeah,
Lobby DVD shop,
yeah.
but you're also an actor in the last video store, the movie. So let's start at the Lobby DVD shop. So how did that come to be? How long have you owned it, and what's the kind of origin of that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, movies have been a passion my entire life. I grew up as a kid in the '80s. You know, the VCR was our babysitter.
Nice.
So I have prominently worked in the bar industry for 25 years, but I was trying to figure out something more. I don't know, worthy to do something important to do with your life. Like, God, what's my job? I get people drunk, or I DJ at night. I'm like, yeah, it's fun and all. Can't do this forever. It was actually a friend of mine. He opened up this store back in 2004. It was originally called Oddity Cinema. Same kind of idea. He wanted to be a niche video store, trying to find titles of the really outrageous stuff. Stuff like Cannibal Holocaust and Sallow and all that kind of crazy stuff. And
Yeah.
back then, there was still Blockbuster Video around, and all the other video stores were there, right? But anyways, he was moving, and he was hoping somebody could take over the shop. He'd only had it open for about 11 months. So I'm like, well, I could do that if I can get some money. So luckily I had some friends lend me some money, and I took over in 2005. I reopened it under the new name, the Lobby DVD Shop. I called it the Lobby because I always thought about the popcorn and soda guys, the drive-in intermission, let's all go to the lobby
Yeah.
commercials, which those two guys are like the mascots in my store, um, except they have knives. But so yeah, I opened August 1st, 2005. And even back then, I'm like, oh my God, who opens a video store in 2005 and expects to make money? So instead of quitting the bar industry and just focusing on the video store, all I did was now I have two jobs. So I store by the day and then working at bars 5 nights a week to keep this place going. But then as time went on, all the other video stores started closing. There was a good, 40, 50 video stores in our city at that time. And then, by about 2014, 15, I realized, holy shit, I'm the last video store now in our city. And I felt like, well, I haven't made a dime, but I love what I do. And somebody's got to be there to educate the kids. And look, whatever you think is good is based off some older and better. So check this out instead. So it's like being the equivalent of like if you remember Indiana Jones' Last Crusade, the Templar Knight who just stands there and guards the Holy Grail, and he's like, can I leave? No, you're stuck here. You got to keep it going.
Yeah.
Fine. That's me lot in life. So people are like, man, you haven't made a dime? Like, no, man, it'll be almost 20 years. It'll be 20 years next year. And like, do you like what you do? I'm like, love it, man. I'll keep doing it until basically I end up looking like the Crypt Keeper, although I'm getting there already. But what the store has lacked in money, it's become part of the community. Met a lot of cool cats, and the obvious one is I wouldn't have met my directors Tim and Cody if it wasn't for the video store. They showed up as customers because the first thing that came out of the shop was we formed our own film festival here in the city. It was called Dedfest, and we started doing that around 2007, where we would take over one of our prominent movie theaters for a good week in October and show these kind of movies, old and new, throughout the week. And we if we could afford it, we bring in actors and directors. So as you know, watching these movies at home is one thing. Watching them with 300 or 400 beer drinking fans in the theater, now that's a total trip. So
Yeah.
over the years, we're out here in Edmonton, but we've managed to bring in guests like Michael Biehn from Terminator and Aliens. We brought in Danielle Harris. We
Very
brought in
cool.
Henry Rollins. That was really cool. And the cool thing is, every time we got a guest for our film fest, they're like, "Wait, you actually have a video store too?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's just down the street." So they're more enthralled with coming to visit the video store. They're like, "Holy shit, this is cool," So
Yeah.
yeah, it's you know, it what I've lacked in financial success, I guess I got in what they call a cultural commodity, I suppose. Like
Yeah.
it's just and now like every time the store kind of struggles and people hear about it in the city, people are like having punk rock fundraiser shows for the store, like, no, we can't let Kev's store close. And like I had a flood here this past summer, and I thought, oh, I'm fucked. But within like 2 hours, like there was like 50 people at my store with shop vacs and like, we'll save the store. So
That's beautiful.
yeah, it's cool, man. It definitely is. And the great thing is it's the younger kids, like it's a younger generation that are really digging the physical media. Like, and when I say younger, I mean 16, 17, 18 years old, that I mean, they weren't even around when Blockbuster was more or less still around. But there's something magical to them about the video store. I say it's turning more into a museum or a relic, but it's a cool relic to visit.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree, man. Like money isn't everything. And if like some people have all the money and hate their lives and hate everything that they're doing, like, and that's,
Yeah.
and maybe you haven't gotten the success yet. I'm hoping you still got it there, like the financial, like you were saying. But
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, you being in your community is huge. Like, because we had, so I'm from Chicago, originally. I moved here a couple years ago. I'm in Austin now,
Yeah.
but my local video store was Ted's Action Video, and when we'd go there, and it was just like the world would open up to me, and because I'm this little Mexican Puerto Rican kid in Chicago whose parents aren't into horror movies at all, and like so like I would go there, I'm like, wow, like I can grab whatever I want, and they didn't know if it was bad or good for me because they didn't speak English or not. So I was getting any Faces of Death and all that sort of shit from there, and like it's weird to say, but I want the next generation to be able to get that shit too.
Oh, for sure, man. And it's funny because technically, the next generation, the young generation today, they technically have everything at their fingertips. But
Yeah.
if you don't know what you're looking for and you have no kind of algorithm, and streaming sites have not mastered that, thankfully, then it gets buried. It's lost. There's something magical about walking into the video store, and you remember your child. You remember seeing those fucking covers, and you're just like, oh my god, I don't know if I'm ready to watch that movie, judging by the cover, but one day I will conquer it. And you're right, because my parents. Like I grew up in a military family, so like my dad wasn't really around. That's why when I said the VCR was my babysitter, it literally was. And when I got a video store card in the mid 80s, it was like going to, Bob's video store, right? Where Bob didn't care if 10-year-old me walked out with Dawn of the Dead or Texas Chainsaw. Bob was cool as shit. But
Yeah.
then
Or video
Blockbuster came.
violence.
Oh, yeah, they just didn't care. We didn't know what was, like you said, what was good for you, what's not, whether it was a horror movie, whether it was some nunsploitation, some sexploitation, all the cool shit. And then Blockbuster came around and ruined it. That's why I have no love for Blockbuster at all. I mean, people get nostalgic for it. I'm like,
Yeah.
man, you went to bad video stores then, dude. You're not going to get a proper gnarly genre grindhouse cinematic education going to Blockbuster. I mean, God, even their uniforms were gaudy. So, no, in fact, I love the irony that Blockbuster killed the mom and pop video stores, but then Netflix kills Blockbuster, and what's left in the video store landscape in North America for us that are out there was the mom and pop video stores. And again, we're delivering or trying to give you guys the movies thanks to boutique labels out there like Arrow Video and Vinegar Syndrome and Scream Factory of the cool movies in life, man. That's like those are the ones that keep physical media going, really.
Yeah. And so with the physical media that you're talking about,
Yeah.
I'm sure maybe you heard or haven't that Blockbuster, no, I'm sorry, not Blockbuster, I'm sorry.
Best Buy.
Best Buy
Oh,
has said that they're going to
yeah.
be stop carrying physical media anymore. And I was thinking that's great for you guys, I would imagine, right? The more independent, smaller or mom and pop shops, right?
Yeah.
I would
Yeah. I
think.
mean, yeah, I think you're right. To be honest, up here, I know they just announced it like over the holidays or whatever, but I've noticed they really haven't been carrying much for the last couple of years, anyways. They might have like the top two or three big movies of the year, like Barbie or Oppenheimer or Mission
Yeah.
Impossible, but that's about it. Like Everything else is discount bin. Oh, look, guys, you can get all 5 Transformer movies in a pack. Like so they really haven't been a thing. And I think Walmart did the same thing. They're kind of gone the way. They just don't care, and that's fine. They don't carry vinyl either, but vinyl's killing it right now, right? I mean, you
Yeah.
look at some of the record shops and some of the prices, it's bananas. And
Yeah. I'm a physical media guy, collecting movies, collecting vinyl, collecting old VHS. Like
yeah,
it's expensive, but I'm glad it's still around. And one of the things you were saying about nostalgia, like for like people when people have nostalgia for best or for Blockbuster, it's like when people have nostalgia for like Barnes and Nobles. Like, why do
mhm.
you Barnes and Noble came and destroyed all the mom and pop like bookstores and all that sort of stuff, you know? That's why so my friend Max, who's Ghoulish Books in San Antonio, they have niche market, which is horror titles. All they carry is
Yeah.
horror books, you know, stuff like that. So I think that's the way to go because you have a built-in audience, or you're not going to get that stuff at Barnes and Noble. Well, you're not going to get a majority of the stuff. I think Barnes and Noble has upped their horror some, but
But
yes,
yeah, it's funny. I mean, I get obviously labeled my shop as a horror movie shop, right? I mean, and it makes sense. I'd say about 50 to 60% of my inventory is horror movies. But basically, I like tell people my shop is trying to help you find movies that you tell me you can't find anymore. So it's a lot of horror, sci-fi, spaghetti westerns, a lot of Asian cinema, a lot of kung fu shit, like and like 80s sex comedies and just ridiculous shit. This sounds weird. So over all the years, I always get asked, Kev, what's like your number one selling movie or renting? Because you can rent or you can buy it in the store. And I said, well, Cannibal Holocaust will always be up there. Like I think I've sold it 5, 6, 700 times, right? But
Jesus,
over this last calendar year, the number two selling movie, and I keep track, I've sold it 83 times this year, Spice World, the Spice Girls movie.
spice up your life.
Why? Why? Because it's actually out of print in North America. You cannot get it in North America for some reason. I don't know if it's a music rights, but I get my copies from Australia and they're region free. It's only on DVD, not Blu-ray. But I posted them. I'm bringing in Spice World, guys. It's for me. It's nostalgia. It's 25 years old. And then I just a wave of people messaging me like, dude, can you get me a copy? I'm like, are you serious? I'm like, I thought I was the only weirdo. And they're like, no, man. I'm like, all right. So yeah, I sell Spice World at least once a week.
That's
People see it
awesome.
on the shelf and they're like, holy shit, is that Spice World? And as time has gone on, movies that I would have considered too mainstream to bring in my shop maybe 10 years ago aren't necessarily mainstream anymore because they're getting tougher and tougher to find. And we got to remember that a 16 or 17-year-old, well, that kid was like 20 years removed from being born when that movie came out. So it's new to him.
Right.
So again, 10 years ago, carrying something like Blade Runner or Alien, I'd be like, nah, like you can get it anywhere. But now I'm like, well, did you try? And I'm like, the library, like, because there's really no, like you said, nobody's carrying physical media anymore. And I'm like, hell yeah, I'll bring it in. To me,
That's
the
cool.
90s feel like last week, but I got to remember, oh shit, the 90s were like 30
Yeah.
years ago now, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, fuck. I mean, I had a buddy ask me, Kev, can you help me find a McConaughey flick, Time to Kill? I can't find it anywhere. I'm like, are you serious? Isn't it like on TMC every night or whatever? Like, no, man. I'm like, yeah, all right, I'll track down a DVD for you. And yeah, so I get odd requests, a lot of TV shows, like dudes are like, Kev, like we're young parents, we can't find Sesame Street seasons for our kids anywhere. Can you get them in? I'm like, yes, but I'm gonna need a deposit on that because if you guys don't come back, I really have no use for this. But I'll
Yeah,
do
yeah.
my due diligence and hook you up with some Bert and Ernie, no problem.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you met the your directors Cody Kennedy and Tim Rutherford through the store, and so you met them through there, and then is that why you guys started making like you kind of vibed out on the same thing? You started making short films.
Yeah, what happened was I mentioned our film festival, Dedfest, we had going, and for a while we had a little competition, like, hey, local filmmakers, whoever can make like a good, solid, fun 3-minute short about whatever, we'll hook you up with some prizes, like from my video store. So Tim and Cody started every month they would show up. They would bring a short, and they won every fucking month. Like their shit. I'm like, damn, these kids. I call them kids. They're 10 years younger than me, so they're in their mid 30s now. But back then, they were in their early 20s, and I'm like, damn, these kids are good. They got this weird kind of, it reminded me of like Astron 6 and our friends, RKSS, the Triple Kid guys, like just that kinetic style. So, anyways, it all came to be because one of our first ever guests, I already mentioned, was we had Michael Biehn, Corporal Hicks and Kyle Reese from Terminator coming in. And I said, well, maybe we should show like a best of his clips on the big screen before we welcome him on a stage. And then Tim and Cody were like, well, why don't we film like a funny kind of Terminator spoof in your video store that alludes into the real clips of Michael Biehn? And I'm like, yeah, that'll be fun. So we did that. And the audience thought it was really funny. And then they knew we showed a movie every month. And they're like, oh, that was great. What are you guys showing next month? I'm like, but nothing. We just did that just as a one-off. Like, well, you should film something else. And I'm like, so for the first little bit, it was like, okay, whatever retro movie we were showing, we would do a parody of it in my video store. So we did like a Battle Royale spoof. We did an Army of Darkness spoof. And then we did a
Saw that one.
Poltergeist spoof. But then one of the months we were showing a brand new original movie, which at that time was Father's Day by Astron 6 from 2011. Like, well, we can't do a parody of a movie nobody's seen. So, well, what do we do like something original in the video store? And at that time, it's like, well, yeah, let's have like Netflix be the bad guy. We'll call him Ned Flix. And he's like a gangster, and he keeps sending his goons into my video store to fuck it up, And we'll make Josh my fake employee in my store, and then it went from there. And then the one that really that people really seem to enjoy. It's been a decade since it's played on the internet. It does really good every Christmas. Is our Christmas episode? "'Twas the Night of
Yes.
Tree Beast," where we had our friend Adam Brooks from Astron 6. He narrated it for us. And yeah, that one really resonated with a lot of people. And it was the first time we tried to make the video store colorful and more vibrant. And then after that, it was, why don't we do an original short film and see if we can submit it into film festivals? And that gave birth to the 2013 short film version of The Last Video Store, which will involve the TV monster and the golden tape, and this whole lore background of the format wars was a real thing. It was a real battle. And then, yeah, it was from that point on, we're like, we should, I think we can do a feature movie. And, 20, 30 drafts later, failed effort in 2014. And well, 12, like I said, 10 years later, whether it was not the movie we envisioned originally, there it is, the feature movie, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great story, and I wanted to commend you guys on whoever's doing your creature design and your practical effects. Like that tree monster is so legit, and every monster, even going up to the last video store, but everything in between, are so great. Like
Yeah,
this.
that's Tim. Cody, it's great having two directors. It's like watching a dysfunctional marriage in front of your eyes. Cody is a brilliant man with the camera, and he's all about the post production and the editing, and he knows what he wants. But Tim, he is the monster maker, and that's him in the Tree Beast costume. When he's not directly behind the camera, he's in the suit. Yeah, he
Yeah,
he he loves that shit. So
that's cool. That's great.
um, it's like Cody, his aspirations, I think, if he could have any dream job in Hollywood, he wants to work for the Marvel universe kind of thing, right? Where Tim wants to be the next Charlie Band, doing all like the Full Moon, like Puppet
Yes.
Masters and Ghoulies and all that shit, and stuff like The Gate, yeah, but you put them together and they complement each other so well. And they drag this cynical video store guy. And like, if somebody would have told me, hey Kev, when you're, I guess I was 46 and we filmed it, but when you're 46 years old, you're going to star in your own movie about the video store. I'm like, back off, like,
Yeah.
guys, I gave up that dream decades ago. I'm cool with just being the pop culture professor of bad cinema to the younger generation. But yeah, you never
So,
know.
okay, we have to start getting talk about the movie because I think I could just talk to you for hours. So I want to be respectful of your time, but that begs a question, and I think I might have even asked you at Fantastic Fest when we bumped into each other. Um, will there be a physical release of the last video store? And will you, if there is, you're gonna have it in the shop, right?
Oh yeah. So okay, the last I heard, it played the film after it played Fantastic. It played in England. It played at Brightfest in London, and it played in Spain and Australia. And Toronto. The hometown screening here in my city was insane. It was 1 month after we were in Austin. I was more nervous about the screening here in Edmonton than I was about the
Yeah, of
world premiere
course.
in Austin because I'm like, well, if nobody likes it in Austin, I'll never see these people again. So I don't care. But here in Edmonton, the theater we screened it at fit 527 people. We sold out 5 days before the movie played. So it was packed. So I'm thinking, holy shit, this is like one of those surreal, this is my life. Like I looked out and all 500 some people I worked with, half of them are my customers. So I said, if these people hate the movie, I'm screwed. Like my store is right down the street, right? But it was such a nuts day that I actually had to close the store at 3 in the afternoon. I was so nervous. I went to the local bar and I just got drunk. Like I was like, I'm too stressed out. But we got there and it felt like the movie. It felt like everybody had already seen the movie. It felt like it was like a Rocky horror experience. Like everybody was laughing at the right beats. Everybody was just, I don't know, losing their minds, and it was great. So, anyways, the last I heard, the guy's got a bit more money, so I know it's being properly recut by a professional audio mixer out in Toronto, which is super cool. They're adding some more visual effects and new music for the climax too. Yes,
Okay.
there will be a physical release. Um, I believe there's a good chance it'll be near the end of 2024. I know, I think we have distribution in Canada. So you're looking at Blu-ray, DVD. Obviously, the gimme is a limited edition VHS tape, of course, as well. And there might even be like a limited edition vinyl for the synth soundtrack from the movie, which is really cool.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, and we obviously, I mean, if we can be greedy, I'd love to like throw all the shorts on there, do new commentary, and kind of do the whole history of the video store. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I try. I don't really care about reviews and critics and stuff, but every now and then you're like, how we doing there? And I'm like, 47 reviews on IMDb. I think we're still sitting at like an 8.5. It's not bad for a little independent video store movie. So
Yeah, it was
yeah,
a ton. It was a ton of fun. Well, I was gonna say, could you give like a 1 or 2 sentence synopsis of what the movie is so people can look out for it when it becomes available to them?
yeah, for sure. I mean, the movie is basically a real depiction of the tragedy that is my life. No, it's yeah. Honestly, the movie, the best way to describe it, because it's not a horror movie, it's not really a comedy. It's a little bit of everything. It is a B movie video store adventure film. I think one critic out in England kind of said it's this meets this, and I hate that this meets this comparison, but somebody said it's Clerks meets the Monster Squad, and I'm like, okay, I guess. But
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, no. So more or less the plot of the movie is well, the what the movie's meant to do is bring you back to the magical era of the late 80s, early 90s of going to the video stores and remembering these ridiculous B movies that never went to theaters. They were the ones we discovered in video stores, like the Charles Band type of movies, right? And it's a young lady. Her name is Nyla, and she is coming to return her father's late movies. He was my last and only customer, is the vibe you're getting. But he was also a rabid VHS collector and hunter down of tapes. And along with the movies he rented from my store, she is also giving me his rare and legendary VHS Nomicon tape. Yes, that's not hitting it too easily on the head, but yeah, it is a curse tape, of course. And as you know, but you've seen the movie, you play this tape and bad things happen. Basically, this curse tape causes all the other tapes and the creatures and characters from those movies to come into my store and make our lives a living hell. And only through the power of friendship can we figure out, and movie nerd knowledge, how the hell can we get out of this using and taking advantage of some of the fake movie characters that I know all too well.
Nice. And I got to tell you, the movie was a ton of fun. It had a bit of heart, which was not expecting that. That was very good. When I'm talking about like Nyla and her father, that relationship, wasn't expecting that kind of hit home really nicely. And then also I gotta admit, like, your acting was really good, and you have like this bit of comedic timing. You're really good at that, and I just wanted to commend you on that because
Oh,
when you think independent movie, owner of a video store, not necessarily, or I don't know, maybe you do have a background in acting or not, I don't know, but I didn't know that going into it, so I wasn't expecting that like comedic timing that you had. And so it was a lot of funny bits in it. So I just wanted to tell you guys, you did a great job in the movie. It was a lot of fun.
oh, thanks. Yeah, no, I've had no official training. I guess just knowing the guys for all the years and doing all the shorts. I always joke. I'm like, well, it wasn't hard to research the role of Kevin the video store guy, but yeah, no, actually the biggest because yeah, the night we showed it in Austin. Our good friends RKSS, and we're big fans. They were showing their new movies there, and they did Turbo Kid and Summer '84, and yeah, Johan said the same thing. He goes, Kev, I knew I'd like movie, in his broken French, but he's like, I wasn't expecting to feel so much in the feels. Like a lot of people brought up the heart thing, which wasn't our intention, but I guess it all depends if you grew up in that video store culture and if you can relate to it. And I think we're hoping that if somebody in like Japan sees this movie, well, they had video stores there too. So there are certain things that are universal, no matter where you're from and what your background is. And video store culture and growing up in that environment is something we can all relate to if were from that generation. So that's definitely what we're trying to hit on, for
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, no, I mean, it was, at first I was telling myself, guys, I'm just playing myself. But then usually I can't stand my own voice or watching myself in the shorts. But Austin was the first time where I'm sitting at the theater. I'm like, damn, I sound good with this surround sound, like I very rare do I take pride in that, but yeah, it was a cool feeling. It was a very,
Yeah.
very surreal experience.
And they had just upgraded the theaters. That's my theater I go to every week for Terror
Mm.
Tuesdays. And they had just upgraded leather seats, Dolby surround. Like, you guys got the treatment for that movie.
Oh
It
man,
had,
that was real. Hey, I'm gonna ask, what is the deal with all the Kubrick stuff? Like, is there a connection between Stanley Kubrick and that theater, or they like? Because it's just all Kubricked out, obviously.
Yeah, so the Draft House has a theme for each one of their theaters, and this theme is just Kubrick.
Okay.
And other theaters have different themes, and then I don't know if you're probably familiar with Mondo. Mondo used to
Yeah.
be, it's not anymore, but so they'll have a bunch of Mondo posters for that. But yeah, it's actually called the Bong Joon-ho Theater, but they went with the Stanley Kubrick theme, so I don't know why. But yeah, but all that stuff was brand new. Like, I had been seeing them put it in week by week, and like nobody thought they were going to get it done for Fantastic Fest, but they got it done. And so all like your movie was probably the fourth or fifth movie shown on a brand new, everything
Oh
brand new.
wow, yeah, yeah. Well, it definitely like I figured it was close to new. Everything was shiny and pristine. It was lovely. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. All right, so
yeah,
let's get started talking about this movie. But real quick, before we do that, how can people follow you? How can they support you, the shop, the movie, whatever the case may be?
yeah. As far as following me, if you're on Instagram, it's Video Store Kev, like you already said. If you're bored and you're on the old internet, you can just Google the Lobby DVD Shop. I got a Facebook group page. On Twitter, I think I'm also Video Store Kev, although I'm not much of a Twitter machine. It's just too much social media for me. Um, and yeah, as far as the last video store, just keep an eye out for it. Funny enough, there's another movie called The Last Video Store that also came out in 2023 from Australia. It's a romantic comedy though, so very different thematically. I'm curious if we're gonna have to switch our title at some point. Like maybe we'll be the last Canadian video store. I don't know, but
I think you
uh,
could do romantic comedies, Kevin.
yeah, yeah. It's never too late, right? It's never too late. But yeah, so yeah, video store Kev primarily on Instagram. And I don't know, maybe one day. It's funny. I've been a guest on enough podcasts, and everybody's like, "Kev, you just like do a podcast from your video store." And I'm like, I would, but I know how much effort it takes for you guys to have
Yeah,
to put these things together and stuff. Because a lot of my buddies are like, dude, you should just do a podcast, have guests on. You can quit the bar industry and just focus on this instead. And I'm like, it would be good to talk movies all the time,
that would be great.
um,
Is
but
there a
yeah,
way, do you sell anything on your website, like the lobby DVD, the lobby shop
yeah.
that people
So
can support?
sorry, yeah. If you want to check out the website for the store, it's thelobbymovies.com. That's the name of the website. We do press our own merch like toques and shirts and hoodies and all that jazz. And yeah, I do a ton of mail out movie orders too for people like that. I've had people that like lived in my city. I no longer live in Edmonton. They live in the States or England or even in other parts of the country, but they still want to support my store. So like, Kev, do you do mail outs? I'm like, yeah, no problem. Because they follow the new movie list of what's coming into my shop every week. And yeah, so
Okay.
I'm pretty easy to get a hold of on the old magical internet. So yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, what I ask everybody is, what is your history with horror movies specifically? I know that you said that the VCR was like your babysitter. So, was that
Yeah.
kind of like your first genre that you kind of gravitated towards, or?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of yeah, we got our first VCR in 1982, 83. I mean, this is when those things were built like tanks, right? Wooden paneling, top poppers. The highest tech thing was the remote. You could plug it into the front and it would go pause play, pause play. I'm like, this is amazing. And yeah, timing was everything. I remember the first two horror movies we rented, or my dad did, was Creep Show and Peter Straub's Ghost Story. And again, way
Nice.
too young to be watching those movies. I remember Friday the 13th, the final chapter was the first Friday I ever saw, which was the greatest Friday the 13th movie of all time, by the way, in my humble opinion. But then I mentioned I moved around a lot as a kid, being in a military family, and there was one military base we were stationed at where the movie theater was on the block where I lived, and they play a new movie on every third day because it was just one screen. And the guy around the theater, my dad was his boss, and he said, "Look, my kid's a little bit socially awkward, so just let him see whatever." And between the ages of 9 and 12, that's how long we lived there, I watched everything front row center with my popcorn stuff I definitely shouldn't have been seeing. So you got to imagine from the eyes of a 9-year-old kid, I'm sitting in the theater between the years 1984 and 1987, and I'm watching like Friday 13 Part 5, Fright Night, Robocop, Predator, all on the big screen. Like that would be mind blowing at that age. Like I got
Sounds
to see
amazing.
Commando like on the big screen opening night, and I'm like, you have to understand Arnold Schwarzenegger was a god to us kids back then, right? But primarily with the horror movies, any horror movie that came out between 84 and 87 that played theaters, I saw it in the theater. And then we moved back to the big city and they wouldn't let me in the theaters because I wasn't 18 and I was really bummed out. I remember they wouldn't let me to go see Jason Takes Manhattan. There's no blood in that movie. It was terrible, anyways.
There's no Manhattan in that movie,
There's no
but
Manhattan. It was Jason takes a boat ride and it's Vancouver, except for the
yeah.
one shot in Times Squares.
Yeah. All right. Okay. And then so talking about your background in horror and how much you loved it, I would typically ask, how did you feel like this particular movie passed you by? I will say with a caveat. So we're talking about Safe from 1995. I put this on my list of movies, and Kevin picked it off of that. I found it. I had never seen it either myself. That's my confession. I had never seen it myself, but it was on a list of horror movies. I don't remember now exactly what list was, but it was pretty like had good company. So I was like, okay, well, if this and this is a good horror movie, then I guess the Safe is obviously good horror movie as well. So I put it on there, and then you chose it. So had you heard of it before you saw it on the list?
No,
Okay,
I never had. In fact, to be honest, that's why I had to double check to say, hey, what year is the movie we're gonna watch out? Because when I saw the trailer and I saw Julianne Moore in there, I'm like, what the hell?
yeah,
Because I know Julianne Moore's first movie was Tales from the Dark Side, the movie in 1990 with Steve Buscemi and Slater. I'm like, oh yeah. And then of course she blew up when she had Boogie Nights, which was a couple years after Safe, I think 97, 98. So,
yeah,
um, but no, I'd never heard of this. And obviously, it was when I was scrolling through the list you gave me, the cover of the movie definitely grabbed me. Like it's right behind you, obviously. The
yeah.
dude, like the Slinky Man or whatever, Noodly Man, all masked up. I'm like, is this going to be like a pandemic thing? Like, what is this? And then I watched the trailer, first, and I'm like, oh shit, it's like contamination or something, because the trailer was kind of vague. And yeah, going into it, I didn't know exactly what to expect. As I was watching it, though, uh, it definitely wasn't what I expected at all. Tonally, and the vibe I was getting for it. Um, Obviously, we're gonna dig into it. Um, those are just my initial thoughts. A, I've never heard of this. B, the cover looks cool. C, it's Julianne Moore. And yeah, the director, I mean, didn't he just recently make a really acclaimed movie this year? May, September, I think it was called.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
That got a lot of
Todd,
buzz. I don't know if it was getting Oscar buzz or whatever, but so yeah.
it had
You know,
all the right parts. And you're right, we'll get into it. But so, Safe from 1995, written and directed by Todd Haynes, who did Far From Heaven, I'm Not There, and Carol. Julianne Moore is Carol White. Like you said, Far From Heaven or Boogie Nights, Far From Heaven, and she was also in Dear Evan Hansen. Uh, Xander Berkeley as Greg White. He was speaking of Terminator 2, or
the
maybe
stepdad.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah, he's Todd.
Air Force One, and he was in Barbed Wire. And then Peter Friedman as Peter Dunning. He was the therapist in it. He was in I'm Not There. He's in Succession. He was in Single White Female. And then the last one I wanted to mention, because there's a bunch of people. But Dean Norris, I'm not sure if you saw Dean Norris. He was from Breaking Bad. He was one of the movers. I don't even think he had a
Oh yeah,
line.
yeah, yeah. I did. You know what? When I checked the IMDb list, I had to do a double take. I'm like, what the shit? I'm like,
Yeah.
hey, everybody starts somewhere, right? You know?
Yeah. And then Rio Hackford as Lester, who is, if you're on the Patreon, you can see the character behind me. That's Lester. And talk about Chekhov's fucking gun. Because I mean, we'll get there, but like I've been expecting this. This is the cover, like you said. And then when they introduced him, I was like, okay, finally we're getting something. And then, but anyway, so real quick, Safe is about an affluent and unexceptional homemaker in the suburbs develops multiple chemical sensitivity. So just gonna go line by line, and then just feel free to interrupt me, and then we can go from there. So I like the way the movie starts. So I might say this earlier or later on in my notes, but like the way they set up the shots for the movie, it's like it's very a lot of stationary, far
Mm.
away shots. They never get like close up shots of the characters, so that you don't feel any connection to them. It's a very cold, sterile movie. I don't know if you
Yeah,
got the
no.
same.
I was picking up right from the get go, and it. So it takes place in 1987.
Yeah.
And it. So we're like the opening 20 minutes, actually probably the opening half an hour. We are literally with these long, stationary, sterile, not getting too close in the character shots. We're being taken through kind of the mundane day-to-day routine of Carol White, who's like, well, her husband seems very successful anyways. I mean, it seems very upper class, well off. um they were in LA, right? That's
Yeah,
or
San Fernando Valley.
yeah, San Fernando Valley, yeah. um I mean, they got a nice house, and their biggest concerns are like getting the right furniture color, and the movers, and she goes to that 80s style yoga aerobics every day, and talking with all the other I guess the housewives, basically, right? And I mean, the most exciting thing is, should I get a new hairstyle, or eat healthier and all this stuff. Yeah, it looks like life is just fine, but so I'm watching it. I'm like, well, first of all, I can't relate to these people at all. I mean, it's weird as you get older, and I'm like, I'll never live in a house like that. That's a nice house,
It's
like
dated.
like. But I'm like, okay, so it just, the director and the vibe of it right from the get go does such a good job of just making life feel so mundane. And, like, just her life just is just so routine.
Well, it even goes to what we were talking about earlier about like money not equal happiness, right? Like these people have all the money in the world, and
Yeah,
as we see when the movie starts, they're driving up to a very affluent neighborhood. It's lined with palm trees, and like they have their own gate and the three-car garage and the Mercedes Benz and all that sort of stuff. And she is miserable. I mean, you could see when she's having sex with her husband, the dude is
yeah.
grunting away like a pig, and she's just like,
Are you
yep, sure,
done?
sure.
Yeah.
She's really supportive, It's like it's very traditional wife sort of thing. Like it's like the 1950s, but in 1987, And I feel like this with like American Psycho, like double feature,
Yeah.
would be like it would be so great.
Yeah. That's a good perspective. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like, well, first of all, I'll get this out of the gate. Watching this movie, I would be dismayed if somebody asked me, is it a horror movie? I'd be like, no. I mean,
Right.
yes and no. It felt more psychological
Psychological.
thriller, the right word? Because I don't even know if it's that. It felt like a psychological drama, a dark,
Yeah.
brooding. My theory is, before we get any further into the plot, if this movie came out now, A24's label would be right on top of that thing. Like it just screamed A24. It also, the first director I thought about who was doing movies at that time is Michael Haneke. Like very slow, meticulous. Of course, Haneke did Funny Games, but
Yeah.
all of his movies are just dread and just really the bleakness of like suburban weird, I don't know, kind of just gloomy life. I'll even say this, and only the parts of the movie, but do you remember like the opening 20 minutes of Lost Highway? David Lynch, like
Yeah.
again, where like tapes started showing up in front of their house before the movie goes batshit crazy.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it had a very Lynchian feel to it too, just because yeah, everything looks beautiful. The house, their life, the should be beautiful, but there's something seriously wrong underneath the it's just yeah, um
It's
money
a bit
does not get
off-putting, right?
yeah, like off-putting.
Unsettling and off-putting. But I'll say one thing, like when it came out in 95, Wes Craven, this is one of the things I saw quoted, was that Wes Craven referred to this as the scariest film of the year.
Oh
So, so Wes Craven is a god among men. But in my opinion, and kind of what you're saying as well, it is tangentially horror, right?
yeah.
But and would I recommend it as a horror film? No. If somebody had recommended it to me as a horror film, I would be kind of disappointed. If they recommended it to me as a good movie, I'm like, yeah, that was a good movie. It's just not necessarily horror, which is fine. Like I like there's you can find horror or horrific elements in all types of movies that aren't necessary.
Oh yeah.
And it's fine. It was just not what I was expecting. That's all for me.
Yeah, and obviously it is a slow burner too. I mean, I always like to warn like my customers. I'm like, look, just like don't like smoke a joint, don't get drunk or whatever. Like grab a cup of coffee, a nice tea, be zoned into this movie. It's like don't watch it with a bunch of buddies. Like
Yeah,
this
yeah,
is you in the movie, very cathartic.
yeah.
And you're right. I mean, it's not a again traditional horror, but I consider movies like Requiem for a Dream to be a horror movie. I mean,
Right,
or
right, right.
like there was a great one, Red, White, and Blue from like 10 years ago, which not with Noah Taylor, which again not a traditional horror movie, but there is horrific stuff happening,
Yeah.
and which as the story of Carol White continues, this is where like this is one of those movies that it doesn't give you all the answers, and I think there's no right or wrong what you interpret happens as the story continues, but you get out of it what you put into it. It's one of those kind of movies, right?
Exactly. I can't wait till we get to the end because I do want
Yeah,
to ask you what you thought about it. So
yeah.
that's so she is kind of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, Miguel, can I hold that thought for
Yeah,
5 minutes? I just have to unlock my video
yeah.
store door.
Go
So
for it. I'm gonna
and
pause this.
all right, yeah.
So So like you said, we're kind of going through her day-to-day thing. She goes to a friend's house to pick something up, and she asks for milk. And I don't, I wish I remember who said this. It might have been Jordan Peele, or maybe I'm just misremembering, but somebody said that when you see somebody drinking milk, like an adult drinking
Yeah.
milk in a film, it's really off-putting and it makes you think that they're evil or something. Like, I don't know what it is. Like,
Well, it's funny when whenever I think of milk drinkers, I'm a big fan of Always Sunny in Philadelphia and
white
the
milk.
McPoyles. Them
Oh
and
yeah.
their
Yeah.
room temperature milk. Uh, uh, God, that show can do no wrong after all these years. But yeah, there's or Inglorious Bastards. Christoph
English best.
Waltz's character,
Yeah. Yeah.
very
Yeah.
shady. Yeah, because
Or
this is
even,
a yeah.
or even, what is that? Shoot. Um, that movie from the 70s with Malcolm McDowell,
Oh,
Orange,
Clockwork Orange. Yeah.
Clockwork Orange, when they're, what do they call it? Do you remember what they call the milk?
Oh, well, the Corolla Milk Bar is the bar, and obviously the milk they're drinking is laced with something special, of course. That is what to get them ready for a night of the old ultra violence.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
God, yeah. What? Oh,
What a
I
great movie.
love that movie. It's just
Yeah.
so vibrant. But yeah, no, you're right. There is something off-putting about grown-ups drinking milk. It like I don't know. Like, have you ever been at a buddy's place and what do you or you go for dinner with somebody like, well, oh, and the waiter asks, what do you have? And like milk, and you're like, okay, uh,
Okay. I think I've had this conversation before with somebody else. My wife, who is white, and there's a reason I mentioned that, drinks when she has spaghetti, she eats it with milk. Or yeah, she'll have a cup of milk. And I mentioned that to somebody to try to dunk on her, and they're like, "Oh no, I eat that too." They were also white. I think it's a white thing, maybe it's a Midwestern thing because they were also from the Midwest or something like that. But it's a thing where people drink a glass of milk with their spaghetti, and it
huh?
fucking blows my mind, and it makes no sense to me whatsoever. But that's why I think she's a supervillain because she's
Yeah,
drinking milk with her.
I don't know. It's just like a white. It's like a mayonnaise thing, like mayo is also generically connected with us white people, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
it was weird. I just, but yeah, but so that's why it's. I saw that I was like, and it's never. She does mention it later on in the movie. She's like, "Oh, I don't even drink coffee. I always drink milk." So I think also maybe growing up in the 80s, they always told us you got to drink enough milk to make your bones strong and all that sort
That
of
is
thing.
true.
And so maybe there's something dealing with that. I think this movie is way too smart for me. And I think that like I can look into this and like there's probably so much there's definitely like a lot of subtext and stuff that I'm not picking up on. And that's probably one of those things.
Oh, 100%. I'm with you. It's funny. It's just like when I pick that movie and I'm watching, I'm like, God damn it, what have I gotten myself into? I am not no academic. Like I'm like my bread and butter is like, oh, we're watching an '80s slasher movie. Oh, baby, love, you are in my butter zone now. I got this shit like that. But
Yeah.
this, I'm like, oh God, I'm gonna probably come off really stupid about misinterpreting this movie, but no, that's the beauty of cinema, though, right? There is no right or wrong answer. I mean, I don't know. You can check all the YouTube interpretation videos by so-called experts in this movie, and you'll get like 5 or 6 different explanations what they think happened, right, or is going on.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah. So then this is where I kind of first noticed the great shot composition here, but she has a conversation with her mom. And it's the quickest call ever. And it's just
mm-hmm.
like, yes, the children are fine. Yes, he's fine. Yes, I'm fine. Okay, thank you. And then that's it. Like she's just detached. She's detached from everybody, and everybody's detached from her. And this is kind of like the first inkling of something of that for me.
Yeah, and it's also interesting that they never really bring it up too much, but the child isn't her child. That is from a previous marriage, so we don't know what happened with the husband's first wife, if he's
Yeah.
divorced, or if she's never in the movie, never mentioned really. So she doesn't even have like the attachment of being a mom per se, like a biological mother to the kid. Like like yeah, it's her stepson, but there's not even that connection with the kid that much. She's just kind of there, like
Yeah. And to
yeah,
your
it's
point about the no connection, her housekeeper, or the head housekeeper, because there's
Yeah.
other housekeepers, her name is Fulvia, and she has to call Fulvia like 3 times in order to get her to come to her. So that's also like that not no connection sort of thing as well. Like I don't know, it's just little bits like that. But yeah, her name was Fulvia. She's calling her. They get the wrong furniture is delivered. The soundtrack is fire. Like the
Hmm.
80s songs that they've picked for this movie, like I
Dude.
went great
Yeah.
bangers.
Every time she's going to aerobics class, I'm getting jazzed. Like, all right, what song are we hearing next? It's like
Yeah.
the best of hits of my childhood going on there, man.
I don't know
Yeah.
how they afforded all those songs. There's a Madonna song in there. Like,
Yeah, there was. It was Lucky Star, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
early Madonna, but still.
No, it what yeah, I mean, well, maybe there's like a moment where like music rights were kind of not that expensive. Like
Uh,
I remember there was one of my favorite awesome early 80s Hillbilly in the Woods movies, Just Before Dawn, with George Kennedy. Love that movie. Group of young people, they're Winnebagoing into the woods, and there's some crazy hillbillies in the woods. It was like a little bit after Hills Have Eyes, well before Wrong Turn, but same kind of idea. But they had a couple Blondie songs in the movie, and I'm like,
oh,
whoa,
nice.
how did they get the rights to Blondie? And it wasn't like B-list Blondie songs. It was like they must have got it right before Blondie blew up, like, oh,
Okay.
thank God we got these songs in there. So yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, they had
Uh
Lucky Star by Madonna, Turn Your Love Around by George Benson,
yeah.
Slow Water by Brian Eno, Get Out of My Dreams, Get Into My Car by Billy Ocean.
Yes, when she's in the hair salon.
Yeah, Heaven is a Place
Like
on Earth by Belinda
Earth.
Carlisle.
Yeah.
Like whenever, well, they had a Kenny Loggins song in there. Like it was just great. I loved it. They kind of hit the like I felt like this was 1987 to me. Like
Yeah.
the production design, like the costuming, everything felt great.
It did. And honestly, I mean, the movie came out in 95, so let's assume it was shot in 94. It's only about a seven-year gap from when it's supposed to take place. So I'm sure getting the fashions and the vehicle stuff, they were prominently still around. I mean, it's not too big of a gap.
Right, right.
I mean, if me and you made a movie this year that takes place in 87, man, that budget's going to be out of control. We're gonna have to like green screen half of the fucking wardrobes, like,
Yeah,
where are we
yeah,
gonna find this stuff?
yeah. So they get the wrong furniture delivered. Next morning, there's like painters in her house.
Yeah.
The kids going to school, and again, she asks Fulvia for milk. Then there's just this shot of her chugging a full glass of milk while the camera slowly zooms in on her, and then the chaos that's going off all around her in the morning, like the painters and the kid going to
Mm-hmm.
school and the cleaners, and she just chugs a glass of milk. Like at that point, I was like, I think this movie may be amazing. Depending on what's going to happen later on, it doesn't turn out to be that way for me. But like I just thought it was going to be more horror and like this is slowly
Yeah.
building up
I, I
to
was
something.
I was sensing I thought we were gonna go into like Cronenberg like vibes,
Oh, body
like
horror.
body horror, like early Cronenberg. Like I thought you're right. There's something with the milk and everything's and it's obvious. That's when the maid is noticing, like, hey, are you okay? And she's just like, yeah, I'm okay, I'm fine, whatever. But I'm like, oh shit, are we going to like Shivers, Rabid, Brood? Like this is gonna be like the early starts of those awesome 70s body horror Cronenberg movies. But no, it goes somewhere else. But
And kind of very small body horror, like
yeah,
towards the end.
yeah, towards the end.
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me, dealing with
Oh yeah, no
allergies
worries.
here. So next she goes to pick up dry cleaning. She attempts interaction with the worker there, doesn't go. She goes to the furniture store, tells them the issue there. She's driving in the car and she's listening to this kind of Jesus end of the world radio that we all know. When I
Yeah.
when I do road trips with my wife and her parents still live in Wisconsin. Sometimes we'll drive from Austin over there. And one of my favorite stuff is when we're out in the boonies and just randomly listening, trying to pick up those types of
Even
evangelical radio stations. It's like the world is ending and you need to repent. I'm like, this is a horror movie. Like I love
yeah.
it. So
That
I just love it. She's like,
that's
why are you
still a
listening
thing,
to
eh?
this?
Like that's obviously me up here in Canada, like we my own interpretation of those kind of evangelical things is well from movies and seeing the news, and we don't really get that up here to that degree. But yeah, I mean, I remember you're right. The old cliche in every horror movie is if you're driving in the middle of nowhere US and you're trying to find a radio station, all you're gonna get is religious zealots like spewing
Yeah.
their brimstone and fire shite at you.
Yeah, and that is legit 100% too, because we do road trips across the country, and I'm able to find the station no matter where we are. I'm able to find that station. It's amazing.
You
It's
can't get
hilarious.
enough, baby. You gotta like you're seeking them.
Yeah.
Yes, tell me
Uh,
how I'm going to hell.
yeah, I see. I'm an atheist. I just love that shit.
Yeah,
So then, but she gets behind this truck which is polluting and it's making her cough. She has to eventually pull off into a parking garage and is coughing to the point of hyperventilating.
yeah.
Like she has to get out of the car. That I was really interested by that. I was trying to figure out where that was going.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get like there's images of traffic in the world. It's a documentary about saving the trees, and she's kind of using it to go to sleep. And she's knocked out on the black couch. This black couch comes back later, or even just the new couch comes back later as well.
Yeah,
But it's to show you that she has like contact with that couch and all that. Um, and it so then she gets up and she goes to drink water before bed. Her husband is already asleep, so again, no connection there. And so she goes outside and stands outside of their pool, and she's just staring off into the night.
right.
And this comes back later as well. And what I failed to mention earlier was she's a bit of a gardener, and she's like, "Oh, my I don't have green thumbs or whatever." And we see that her flowers here are not looking very well.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't kind of connecting the two, trying to figure out what they were trying to say there. But yeah, so then later she's meeting her friend for lunch, and they just decide to have a fruit salad, an all fruit diet.
All fruit diet.
Yeah, and this is very 80s, like the fad dieting
Mm-hmm.
part of it. Um, so then she has a client dinner with her husband, and then this client tells this stupid fucking blonde joke that is
It
it's a
was
dumb
terrible.
blonde
It
joke.
was
It's a
terrible. I
terrible
wouldn't have
joke.
laughed either.
Yeah. And but because they're all trying to, so like it's like maybe three or four other couples. And as soon as he tells the punchline, they all start cracking up. But she doesn't laugh. She's just like staring off into space, completely detached from everything that's going around her. And
Yeah,
her husband like elbows her like Carol, and she's like she apologizes and she looks at him. She can't even fake laughter, which I agree. I wouldn't laugh either.
yeah. I
It's a
mean,
boomer
it was one of
humor.
those cringy moments though, where you're like, ah, man, like, yeah, it was a terrible joke, terrible joke. But yeah, I mean, she was so checked out, and I'm like, I'm feeling for her, and like, again, it's just one of those cliche the business dinner things where like you just got to put on a happy face and be there for my husband's. Yeah, we assume it was a client. Did they ever say what the husband does? Like what his actual job is?
No, never.
Nah, it's probably some bureaucratic book. I don't know,
Yes.
like some
A,
generic job that pays well, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's
It
a 80s high rise computers. What's that Michael J. Fox movie where he starts in the mail room and he
Secret of
like
my success.
Secret of My Success,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then so she apologizes later on and he suggests for her to go see a doctor.
Right.
The doctor says, I don't see anything physically wrong with you. But I'm thinking, yeah, maybe not physically, but she's obviously depressed and she's going through
Mm-hmm.
disassociative episodes. And she says she's just stressed out. And then this is where she's like, she's a milkaholic. And
Yes.
he tells her to stop the all fruit diet and stay off of dairy, which I just realized is her
Yep.
milk,
That's
her
right.
milk
Yep.
thing, right? So I think just, I was talking to my wife about this. Like women historically have trouble getting health care because male doctors don't believe them. And then women of color have it even worse off. Like they have trouble even getting prescriptions and stuff like that because they just they're not believed when they go there. And
Mm-hmm.
this is what's happening here. It's like she, this is a terrible doctor because he doesn't recognize the signs of mental illness. Like he's just like, it's the fruit diet. It's like, I don't think a fruit diet's going to cause you to space out. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just
Also, I mean,
frustrating.
maybe that's another reason why having the movie take place in the 80s, mental health maybe wasn't as acknowledged back then as it is. It's
Right.
taken far more seriously now, of course. But I don't know. Well, no, I guess in the 80s, I mean, going to a psychiatrist was pretty common in the 80s. I
Was
mean,
I think it was still stigmatized a bit
yeah, a little
then.
bit.
Because I remember like even in this movie, I think I'm trying to remember whether or not like people find out that she's going to therapist and they say something. But I remember sitcoms and movies about like, oh, she's seeing a therapist or
Yeah.
psychoanalyst or something like that. But so that was a bit of a frustrating scene. But at night, their son, who happens to be like this future young Republican, his name is
Oh, big
Rory.
time, man.
He's like reading a book report about the gangs in LA.
Gangs. Yeah.
Yeah, gangs in LA, and it sounds like it could be a stump speech for like a campaign trail for Donald Trump or something like that. And the dad is eating it up. And Carol asks, "Why did it got to be so
Be so
gory?"
violent. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
Rory says, "That's how it is, Mom. Gosh, you just don't know anything about the streets." And it's like, "Oh,
Yeah.
like you do, you little shit. You don't know shit about the streets."
How do you spell Uzi? Ah, that's easy, son. It's yeah, yeah. No, it yeah, that kid definitely didn't win any brownie points with me as far as how he's being raised.
Yeah.
Um, and again, 87, right? I mean, the kid would have been watching movies like Colors with like Sean Penn and like Robert Duvall to show the streets. It's especially in that neck of the woods, I suppose. But
Yeah.
uh,
So then the husband asks about the doctor's appointment, but completely checks out after asking it. So he's just like, "Hey, how'd it go?" And then just doesn't listen to her when she's talking about it. Um, so later she goes to see the
yep,
hairdresser, and she gets a perm. I thought it looked pretty cool.
it
I
looked
like the
cool, man.
process. Yeah,
I thought it was going to be like a big 80s boofy thing, but no, it looked it had I like the curls. Good on you,
yeah,
Julianne.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the husband was supportive of it. Like there's some parts where like I was kind of having this conversation with Hillary, my wife, because it's like she didn't see it, but I wanted her to because I don't really understand the husband. Like he's checked out, but he's supportive. Like he shows up later, but like later on, there's a part where like there's a sex involved and he didn't respond very well. But then
No, because
afterwards, he apologizes. So it's like,
the next morning, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I'm like, I'm not quite sure how to feel about the
I
husband, which
I
is
think
great because they don't make him the villain.
no, they don't. I mean, honestly, I don't feel the only they vilified him in that scene. He compliments her hair. He's obviously aroused by her new look. He's thinking, hey, all right, maybe we can do that marital stuff. And she's just like, I'm more or less, I'm sorry, I just got a headache. I'm just not feeling it. I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
And you could just see his, I mean, right or wrong. I mean, obviously he's got some pent up stuff, and he was kind of hoping, and he gets shut down. He's just like, fine, like
Pouts like a child.
yeah, pretty much, pretty much. He might have yeah, he might have want to taken it down a bit, but he did apologize in the morning. Um,
Yeah.
and I believe it's that very next morning that unfortunately that's when the more symptoms start hitting her immediately, right? Uh,
Yeah. So
in the
next
bedroom
morning,
there.
yeah, Greg
Yeah,
gets ready for work. She
yeah.
apologizes. She apologizes, which is I don't know why she needed
Oh
to apologize,
yeah. Yeah.
but they hug, um, and then she starts crying in his arms, and then she just throws up.
Right.
I
Yeah.
was not expecting that at all.
Yeah. No.
They go to the doctor's office for an exam. Doc tells her that she's actually better health than the last time she came in. And this is where he recommends a psychiatrist, and the room falls silent. So this is like, oh, really? A psychiatrist?
Yeah. But he
And
doesn't talk to her though. He gives him the card. It's like she's not even in the room.
yes, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. And I've had that with like when Hillary and I go out to a restaurant, I don't order for her. She orders her own thing. I order my own thing. But
Mm-hmm.
like the waitress or the waiter will like talk to me and like always like, is there anything else? Like they'll hand me the credit card, like the charge and all sort of stuff. And it's like sometimes I forget my wallet and she's got to pay. Like So then I
Yeah.
just had to hand it to her or something like that. I don't know. It's something weird about like, and then Hillary has said like they don't even look me in the eye sometimes. I was like, wow, yeah, that's messed up, you know?
Huh. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it
Society is a funny place, man. You know?
yeah. So at night again, she's not sleeping. So that's also a sleep deprivation thing that she's going through. Like her symptoms are just starting to stack up here.
Yeah.
But so she's not sleeping. She goes outside, look at her flowers, and then the security or cops kind of come by and ask her if everything's all right. She runs back inside, and Greg asks her what was she doing, and
Doing,
yeah, she says she couldn't sleep because of the smell in the air.
yes.
Yeah. So now we're starting to kind of pick up what's happening. Later on, she goes to an exercise class. She's not really motivated. Sorry, she's not really motivated for it. But when she's leaving the class, she sees a flyer.
Hmm.
You remember what the flyer said, or generally speaking, what the flyer was
Uh,
talking about?
yeah, like, do you suffer from these symptoms? And basically every symptom on that flyer is what we witnessed her more or less going through during the movie so far. Like everything on that orange flyer was like, yeah, yeah. And even I was like, yes, definitely call these guys, like this seems auspicious to say the least. Also, you remember earlier in the movie when she is going to the aerobics, remember how the other ladies comment that she never sweats?
Right.
Like she does not break any sweat at all,
Yeah,
which
that's
is an
true.
off the cuff remark earlier in the movie. And you're like, oh, that's a bit weird. After a good workout, you're going to sweat a little
Well, a
bit,
little
but
bit, yeah.
no perspiration.
She just glows.
Glows. Yeah.
And yeah, so it said, are you allergic to the 20th century? Trouble breathing? Is your
Yeah.
drinking water pure? Skin irritations? Are you always tired? And then what I noticed is it's on red paper, which is I'm
Oh,
just
was it
starting
red?
to
I thought, yeah, you thought it was like blood orange, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well, okay. I am a little bit colorblind with red and green. So
Well,
to
that's no
me it
good
appeared
because I'm
red.
also slightly colorblind. So one
Kevin,
of
what are we doing here, man?
I don't know, man. This is why we're not astronauts, baby. We
Yeah,
couldn't pass
exactly.
the colorblind test.
To me, it appeared to be on red paper, which is the color theory here. But you just blew my mind. Maybe I don't understand the color theory at all.
I'm thinking it was like blood orange, like it was like a heavy shade of orange. But
Okay.
yeah,
Uh, but so she takes the flyer. Um, then she's at the therapist, and she describes herself as a homemaker, a stepmom. She hasn't been feeling well for about 3 months now.
yep.
Again, she mentions the fruit diet. But then the therapist, there's like a huge gap of distance between the therapist and her. Like he's sitting behind her desk. He's sitting behind his desk, and like she's like way across the room and her
Mm-hmm.
couch. I've been to therapy, been to therapy the last 5 years or so, and like that is the most cold kind of like my therapist has always been when I've been in the same room, like maybe 5 feet away from me,
Yeah.
but like not behind the desk. Like I don't think that therapist cares at all for me if you wouldn't even come from behind your desk. I don't know.
Maybe that's just how they rolled in the 80s,
Yeah,
very, very, very yuppie like. I don't know. But yeah, the desk is a big blocker and symbology wise.
yeah,
It's not
yeah,
even a word. Yeah.
yeah. But she's sitting straight up, like in the middle of the couch, and like on her face, you could tell the look of somebody who's suffering
Yeah.
mental distress, right? But the therapist is a complete dick. Later on, they're at this baby shower. Carol is out of it, and again, I just uh, we noticed that on her face, it's something that she's obviously like asking for help, but nobody's like offering. She's just not getting the help that she needs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the other women are actually gossiping about her.
Yeah.
And then she's talking to her best friend, supposedly, while they're eating cake, and she's just interrupted by a kid who wants attention and party festivities. So then there's a great shot of Carol. Her face looks panic stricken. Her breathing is ragged. The child that was sitting on her lap gets scared,
Yeah.
and the other women are kind of asking what's happening, but she can't respond. And it's I guess she has another panic attack.
Yeah.
They
Call the
attempt
hospital, get her doctor, you get a glass of water. And
Yeah. Or glass of milk. That's what she likes, right?
yeah, and that's also that's when they're commenting behind her back about her personal appearance. We're like, yeah, her hair looks great, but ooh, everything else about her not looking so good right now.
Yeah.
Looking very gaunt in the face, I suppose.
So she's writing a letter. She's writing a letter to the organization from the flyer. Greg interrupts her letter writing. He
Yeah,
asks what she's up to, and she just kind of trails off.
she's like, "Where am I?" And he's like, "You're in your home." Like now, it's just like, "Oh shit!" Like she is like, I don't know if that was a metaphorical question or did she really like not know where she was for a second. Like she was just spaced right out.
Yeah. Yeah. I think she just like spaced right out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he says, we're at your house. We're at Greg and Carol's house. And then she does this smile cry, which I always find so disconcerting when somebody's smiling and crying
Yeah.
at the same time. And then we get like this TV off air signal, which is a great transition because she's now at the orientation for that organization
Yeah.
from the flyer. And if it says, if you take the freeway, you're afraid you might choke on fumes. Your family and your friends are calling you crazy. This is an environmental illness. After the class, there's more traffic is backed up. She arrives home looking for Fulvia. She can't find her or Greg. And at this point, I was like, oh shit, are they going to do like a cheating story? Maybe
Hmm.
he's cheating on her with Fulvia. And the camera kind of zooms in on her, but then suddenly he appears behind her. I'm like, oh, okay, not. So it's like it's playing with it's subverting expectations a bit for
Yeah.
me anyway. I was like, because I'm expecting the husband to be an asshole, and he does have his asshole moments, but not in the typical asshole movie villain that we've come to know.
Right, exactly. I mean, we expected him maybe to be cheating on her because he totally cheated on Helen in the movie Candyman with his student. But that's they got to separate the art from the artist right there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Great reference. Great movie. Um, so then he asks her about the class, and she explains about what it was. And then he asks, well, who told you to go to this? So
Hmm.
she doesn't have her own agency. She can't make up her own mind about going somewhere. A man has to tell her that she should go to this sort of thing.
Exactly.
So there we go, asshole. He's an asshole.
That's it. That's the asshole mark right there. It was the
Yes.
80s.
Yeah. And then she kind of tells him why she wants to go to this. It's like she's telling him about all the chemicals that they live
Hmm.
with, and she's like, "So you're sick because of bug spray?"
Bug spray, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
later they're showing her taking all these allergy tests.
Oh yeah, that was eesh.
This was rough
Yeah.
for me. I
That's a
don't typically,
lot of prodding at the old arm there, man. Like,
and this must be like how they did it in the mid 80s because I haven't done it, but I had my dad told me they did it, and it was well, like a bunch of shots, but all at one time. Like they just
yeah,
like poke it into your skin. Like they were talking about 50 separate
yeah,
allergy tests for separate foods and molds, like 50 separate shots.
dude.
That's crazy.
That's yeah, it was like her arm, like, yeah, literally looked like a pincushion. Like they had it all, colorized. I'm like, damn,
A little bit
that
of
was
body
yeah,
horror
that was a
there.
very uncomfortable scene. But then obviously one of those shots did affect her. In it's like they, yeah, they're waiting for it. They're expecting it. Like, oh well, that's good. Have we made any progress? Well, we don't know how to solve it, but at least we know one of the things that's causing it, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So she basically has another panic attack, which I got scared, but because she was with a doctor, they were able to
Yeah.
give her the injection and kind of bring her down, which was great. But here I wanted to tell real quick about the sickness that she is supposed to have. And it's multiple chemical sensitivity. And I looked it up on Wikipedia. And it says it's an unrecognized and controversial diagnosis characterized by chronic symptoms attributed to exposure to low levels of commonly used chemicals. Symptoms are typically vague and nonspecific. They may include fatigue, headaches, nausea, and dizziness. Although these symptoms can be debilitating, MCS is not recognized as an organic chemical caused illness by the World Health Organization,
Hmm.
the American Medical Association, nor any of several other professional medical organizations. Blinded clinical trials show that people with MCS react as often and as strongly to placebos as they do to chemical stimuli. The existence and severity of symptoms is seemingly related to perception that a chemical stimulus is present. Commonly attributed substances include scented products, e.g., perfumes, which comes back later in the movie, pesticides, plastics, synthetic fabrics, smoke, petroleum products, and paint fumes. So, paint fumes earlier in the movie, her house was getting painted.
Yep.
And that's when she chugged the milk and all this sort of stuff. So like she has this multiple chemical sensitivity thing, but so she's kind of like an unreliable narrator. Like we don't know if she's actually doing those things or if she's having these symptoms because of this or vice versa, you know. So it's just weird. Like it's on unsure ground with her.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, the whole storytelling method of this movie is on unsure ground. You know, again, I think that's why you could literally watch this movie and go, "Yep, it's definitely a chemical thing. Like it's a real thing. That's a reaction that she's having." Or you can just be the other opposite side and go, "It's all in her head, man. Like it's the monotony of her life in general. That's it sounds fucked up, but like if your life is that you know boring and monotonous on a day-to-day basis, geez, even if something as horrible as what she's going through isn't a good thing, at least it's something in her life to focus on, like, hey, this is happening, I hate it, but it's better than listening to my husband grunt while I'm in bed with him, like um but again, this is where I'm ramping up, and I was just like, okay, let's see when she gets to this compound. Let's see what's going on here, what these other people are going to be like, right?
Yeah. And I think like the director and also the writer, Todd Haynes, he's kind of put us in a weird situation because as I just stated earlier, women aren't believed a lot by medical professionals. Now Todd has put us in a situation in which we are possibly not believing
Mm-hmm.
her about her symptoms, right? So it's like for me, it's like, oh man, do I just want to not be part of the problem and be part of the solution sort of thing? So I think it was pretty interesting writing on Todd Haynes' part.
Yeah.
So later, she's at a meeting for the organization. I forget what it's called, but there's basically saying you have to create an oasis, a safe space for yourself. It could be an airtight, like porcelain container. Other people just have like a stripped down room. And Greg's there with her. Greg's there with
Mm-hmm.
Carol. And I thought, well, good job,
Yeah,
Greg,
that's
being
cool.
supportive, right? Later on, there's women talking about basically doctors not believing them and that they're suffering from this chronic illness. And so now she's starting to pick up steam with this group. She's having lunch with her best friend. She's got no makeup on.
Mm-hmm.
Still looks fantastic. I'm sure she
Yep.
does have like movie makeup and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But she's telling her like all the stuff she's learning that the couch was toxic. Um, all the other chemicals are toxic, and her friend is supportive to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And later, she's listening to books on tapes about toxins. The goal is to get clear, which I thought isn't that like a Scientology thing?
That is a Scientology thing, going clear. Yeah.
And I don't know too much about it. Do you know anything about what going clear means?
No, no. I just
Okay.
remember that was the name of the documentary that HBO
Yeah.
put out, which was a fascinating documentary to say the least.
Okay. And I haven't seen it, so I'd love to check it out.
Yeah.
But then we see that she has her safe room, but she's also started carrying an oxygen tank and,
Yeah.
and like bottled water. And it's
Uh,
like that's funny. Like mid 80s, bottled water definitely seemed like a bougie thing. I remember that.
oh
I
yeah.
remember like you wouldn't get bottled water unless you were like rich or something. Like now
Yeah.
everybody has bottled water, you know?
Yeah. You're paying for water? Yeah. Yeah. I know. It was a bougie thing.
Yeah. Um, but it seems like the more that she's learning about this chemical thing, the worse she's getting because now
I was
she
gonna
has an
say the more
oxygen tank.
she's digressing, like she is believing the hype, like, and it's physically, like, again, I'm not questioning is she physically degenerating as the movie goes on. What I'm questioning is she physically degenerating because she's absorbing mentally all this information that is tricking her brain into telling her this is what's going on. And it's like you're looking for the symptoms, which a lot of people, like I believe, like, if you try and mentally make yourself sick with your mind, you can probably make yourself physically sick, so
Yeah.
again, it's
Like a
yeah, it's because
psychosomatic response.
yes,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
So and she's wearing a mask around, which nowadays we like if
I was
we
gonna say, yeah, it was very timely watching it. I'm like, now it's just like, yep, not a, it's crazy. Like you're right. In that era, if you saw somebody wearing a mask in the public, you're like, you give them the look for sure. Like, what's going on? And now, obviously, what the world's been through in the last 4 or 5 years, it's just like, man, it's nobody blinks anymore. Of
yeah,
course,
yeah,
people are still wearing masks, or some
yeah.
people are. The grocery store, whatever. Yeah, rock and roll.
But she walks into the dry cleaners
Yeah.
who's like spraying, fumigating.
Yes.
It's like, why are you in the building while they're fumigating?
Fumigating. Yeah.
But she like falls to the floor and starts convulsing, and she's
Yeah.
rushed to the hospital. And the
And
doctor is asking her what's causing her to be sick. The doctor's completely frustrated at her,
yeah.
and the doctor says that all the stuff that she's saying, like she's allergic to or whatever, like all the chemicals, none of that is showing up in the tests.
Yeah.
And then they also ask what caused her bloody lip, and Carol
Mm-hmm.
says the chemicals. So, I don't know. They leave it up to you at this point, right? So then she's watching TV in the hospital, and she comes across a commercial for an environmental illness center called Renwood,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an alternative place to live. Um, and she gets kind of all jacked up to look at it. And so next, and she tells her husband to wake up. And so next, she's on her way.
Yeah.
It's in Kentucky. And as they're driving up to like, it's out in the country, as they're driving up the dirt road, there's this woman yelling, "Stop the car!
Yeah.
Stop
The
the car!"
capture. Yeah.
Yeah, because like they're apparently contaminating the whole area with
Yeah.
with the car fumes, which I thought was this one when I thought it was going to turn into like a cult movie, which is
Y- y-
kind of is, right?
Yeah, no, I'm with you because I remember my big thought right away was going from the commercial advertisement to this place to when she pulls up. I'm like, oh shit! Like, does this place look like this? Looks nothing like the commercial. It looks all run down and rickety. Like, what is waiting for her? Like it did look like a compound, like a cult thing. But then as she gets closer to the premise and talks to more people, like, oh, okay, it's not quite a cult thing yet. But
Yeah,
continue. Yeah.
yeah. So she gets out of the car. She's got to bring her own stuff, including her oxygen tank. And that's when we meet Susan, who
Yeah.
helps Carol with her things. They say it's a chemical-free zone. I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, you guys have never taken chemistry? Like everything is a chemical.
Yeah.
Everything you have is made up of chemicals.
Well, no bug spray on the premise. We'll
Yeah,
just assume that.
yeah. But then she gets a tour. She calls home, and Greg picks up, and they have a nice conversation. But again, it's a bit cold, right?
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh, glad you're there. Yes, everything's nice. Oh, we're just about to step out to dinner. Okay, I'll call you back." And then that's it.
Yeah.
Like if my wife were going to be gone for an untold amount of time,
Yeah.
like dinner can wait. I don't know. Just weird. But later, she's kind of hearing the rules of the place. There's no drugs, no sex.
X.
Then we meet Peter Dunning. He's talking, and he's a chemically sensitive person who also happens to have AIDS.
Yeah.
And I believe I was reading up on what the director Todd Haynes said about this is he wanted to make the character gay, and I believe Todd Haynes might also be gay. I may be wrong about that, but I think so. But he wanted to make the character gay so that people would trust him
Mm.
because at the time of the movie where the gay the AIDS epidemic, all that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. And so you're gonna trust somebody who's like living with AIDS as opposed to like they're not gonna villainize them, right?
Right.
So that's why he did it, and then come to find out later on that he's not the great guy that he seems to be, you know. So where are we at? Okay. He basically is just like he has left judgment behind. He talks about the world getting better, longer, with what they've created there. And so it very much sounds like a cult leader,
Yes.
right? And everybody's just like looking up at him and like just like in love with him, sort of thing.
Yeah. Singing that kumbaya stuff,
Cult of
love
personality.
heals all.
Yeah, exactly. He might even freaking say that at one point, you know.
I think he
Uh,
did. I think love was a big factor.
yeah. And he says, "We are one with the power that created us. We are safe, and all is well in our world."
Yeah.
That's their mantra. Then a musical group comes out. It's just like church. Everybody starts
Yeah.
singing and all that sort of stuff. Um, so Carol goes to her cabin. She just starts crying.
Mm-hmm.
Claire goes to check in on her and helps her breathe, regulate her breath so she doesn't hyperventilate. Carol says she couldn't walk away when she got there, so they just sat in her room, and Carol said, "I love you." Everything she's like everything gotten taken away from her, and at the end, the only thing that was left was her, which
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of a good thing to think about. That even though if in this life you lose everything, the only thing you'll have left is you. So you better like yourself. You better love
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Right? So I kind of like that part of it, right? Not everything is bad from what they're saying here. Um, for some reason here, Carol just starts singing into the night, which I kind of like because she's maybe starting to feel a little bit better,
Yeah.
right?
Uh, yeah. I mean, again, from her breaking down in her cabin to was it Claire came in, or who's the other woman that came in and said, "Hey, I,
Claire,
I know
yeah,
this." Yeah, yeah. Everything she said was perfectly valid. Like, this is a new place for you. It's a lot. Talk about a life changing few months, and now you're here in the middle of nowhere in Kentucky, and yeah, it's a lot to take in. But like baby steps, embrace it, and
yeah,
we're all here together to get better. But yeah, she does start singing. So you're thinking, okay. Uh, I was really curious. I'm like, is she going to get better, or let's see what happens next?
yeah. So later she goes for a walk and we hear her letter that she's writing to Greg and Rory.
Yeah,
But on her walk, she comes across the road and a truck just speeds by.
yeah,
It was like Pet Cemetery speed,
yeah.
and she has to run away from the truck and she's coughing and all that sort of
She's
stuff.
being
Like,
chased by the chemicals. Yeah.
yeah, that was a bit funny to me. Like that, it wasn't meant to be funny, but just
Mm-hmm.
the quickness of it and her reaction to it made me chuckle a little bit. But she's preparing for Rory and Greg to come visit her.
Yeah.
Later, Peter's talking with Carol about Lester, her neighbor, if you could see it on the Patreon,
Yeah.
uh, talking about Lester, who's her neighbor, who covers his face and kind of walks weird. And I thought, okay, finally, we're finally
Mm-hmm.
gonna get somewhere with Lester. But then nothing happens at this point. Peter asks how she is, and she says she may be too close to the road and she wants to switch cabins. And
Yeah.
he's like,
Well.
I don't deal with that shit. Talk to
Yeah.
Claire or whatever. He can't be bothered with that sort
Yeah.
of shit.
Red flag number one, right there. Like, okay.
Yeah. And then later on, I don't think it's here. I hope I commented on it, but if I didn't, he's talking all this kumbaya shit, and everybody's living like safe room type lives, and then up on the hill, he's got a fucking mansion,
Mansion. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So later she signs up for a sharing meal, which means that they're gonna cook the dinner for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as she signs up, this other dude just quickly signs up. And I was thinking, oh, like he's trying it. Like he's shooting his shot. I think his name was Chris, I believe it was, you know.
Yeah, played by James LaGrosse, like, indie 90s acting darling James LaGrosse, who, Phantasm 2, All right.
I'm not
Uh,
familiar.
yeah. He was one of the up and coming echelon actors in the '90s. You check out his resume.
Okay.
But he was when Costarelli made Phantasm 2 for Universal. He was allowed to keep the same cast as original, except for the character of Mike. He had to hire like a Hollywood kind of guy, so he got James LaGrosse to play Mike in Phantasm 2. Did a great job. But then when Costarelli got the other Phantasms back, he got the original Mike actor back for 3, 4, and 5. But yeah.
So I'm going to do a confessional here to you, Kevin, is that I've only seen Phantasm 1
Oh,
and I didn't enjoy it. So I haven't I Coscarelli, like he did Bubba Hotep, right?
yep, yep.
Wasn't a fan of Bubba Hotep either.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know why. It's like should be right up my alley, but like something dealing with Coscarelli, like the stuff that he does, I'm not a fan of. It's been over a decade since I've seen Phantasm, and you're not the only one. Like everybody loves Phantasm. So maybe I was just not in my, I didn't grow up with it. I
Okay.
saw it in my mid 20s, or probably I was
Yeah.
possibly already 30. So I don't have any nostalgia for it. So I got to go back though. I got to give it another shot.
Well, I'll be honest. I actually saw Phantasm 2 first. That came out in 1988, so I was like 12. So it hit my video store. I rented it, and it was luckily it was one of those sequels where they kind of let you know everything that happened in the last movie in the first 5 minutes, right? So I didn't feel lost.
Yeah.
I respect the original Phantasm for being so unique and bizarre and original for 1979. I fucking love Phantasm 2. Phantasm 2 is a superior movie in my mind in every
Okay.
way. It is just bonkers.
All right. You
Uh,
sold
so
me. I'm gonna watch it now.
so you might even do what I do, like just jump into Phantasm 2. They do a good recap in the opening 5 minutes, so you totally know what's going on with narration. Because remember, there was an 11-year gap between the two movies, and it was a big studio movie, the sequel, so they wanted to make it as easy for people to digest as possible. So yeah, maybe give Phantasm 2 a chance
Okay.
when
I
you
think
can.
I think I got my movie picked out for today. So
All right,
all right. So back to the movie here.
right, yeah.
Later, they have a group therapy session activity where they share details of their life with them based on different prompts. Carol's prompt was a room you had as a child, and
Mhm.
Carol remembers a room with yellow wallpaper.
Yeah.
Do you know this reference at all, the yellow wallpaper?
No,
Okay,
enlighten my soul.
so the yellow wallpaper, I'm sorry, is actually a story that I read maybe 5, 7 years ago for another dead podcast that I was doing by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. It's a short story about a woman diagnosed with temporary nervous depression, which is a
Ooh,
slight hysterical tendency, and is sequestered in a room where something happens to her sanity. And it's covered in yellow wallpaper. And it's another thing about not being believed by the men in her life and all that sort of stuff. So, like, I think this is a perfect example of what the director Todd Haynes is doing. He's like seeding these things throughout the
mm,
movie. This is just one of those things that I happen to pick up on, but there's probably a dozen other things that I didn't pick up on. That's why it's so
yeah.
smart. Like the writing is very smart.
Hmm.
But
Interesting.
yeah, I'd recommend that story to anybody. It's a short story, The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkin Gilmans.
Okay.
So, but as she's telling her story, they're interrupted by an ambulance.
Yeah.
And then later on at night, Peter's telling them that one of the people there, their husband passed away. And Carol is talking to Claire about possibly moving away from the road. And she says that now that that person has passed
Passed
away,
away.
you can move into their older place they weren't using, which was kind of great for her.
Hmm.
Because she's got it in her head now that she's close to the road.
Yeah.
And we're coming up here. We're almost done with the movie here. So later, Peter is talking to the group and he says that he stopped reading the papers and listening to the news. No negative energy.
Hmm.
He's afraid his immune system will be compromised by it. And this is actually a real thing. Not so much that it happens, but that in the 80s with the AIDS epidemic, people were
Yeah.
worried that if you had AIDS and you started reading all of negative press and all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff, you could affect your health. And so there was actually a prominent psychiatrist, or I don't know if they were a psychiatrist or not, but there was a prominent media figure espousing these ideas. And who knows whether or not it's true or not. But I know that, like, me for myself, I doom scroll all the fucking time now, especially with what's happening in Palestine and all that sort of stuff. Like, and that affects me mentally,
Yeah.
affects my sleep schedule, all that sort of shit. So I could see how it could also affect you if you're already sick on the top of all the other shit that's happening.
Oh, 100%, man. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, we're kind of screwed if the world around us and the news affects us. Like I do my best not to look at my phone till I get to work. Anyways, I can't. It's like I stopped using my phone as my alarm clock a long time ago because your day could be ruined before you even get out of bed, right? You're
Yeah.
like, ugh. Like it's just, yeah, I literally bought an old timey alarm clock for my bedroom just for that reason. I leave my phone in the kitchen, I'm like, nope, not touching it because it's, I mean, sure, there's a potential that there could be good news on the phone. Like, hey, I got a friendly email from Miguel. We're doing this podcast. Awesome. But 9 out of 10 times, it's like bills, the world's falling apart,
Yeah.
disappointing people. Oh, they're remaking one of my favorite movies. Day's ruined.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, mind over matter, I guess, is what Peter was going on about there, more or
Yeah.
less.
So then we do see that Greg and Rory are here. They're visiting,
Yeah,
and she says that she's going to be staying a bit longer. Then they come across Nell, whose husband just passed away, and
yeah,
she's crying, and they kind of stop to look
yeah,
for a lot longer than I feel comfortable. Like, immediately, I'm like, we shouldn't even stop. We should just keep walking and give her her
yeah. And the
privacy and
damn
sort of thing.
kid keeps staring too. Come here, kid. Get out of
Yeah,
there.
it's like,
Yeah,
Rory. I said now. It's like, you little shit.
yeah,
Like, what's so fascinating about a person being like just
yeah.
crying? I don't know. But um next day at group therapy, they talk about why they became sick,
Mm-hmm.
and but Carol doesn't say why, while others are kind of saying why.
Yeah.
And then Nell says that she got sick first, and then her husband, he thought she was crazy, but that he got sick as well. So again, like, is it like they hadn't said anything about this being transmutable?
Mm-hmm.
So now is it actually mental? You know? But Peter then says that we were the ones who got ourselves sick. So I'm not quite sure what he was meaning there, because if it's chemicals, does he mean that because we allowed ourselves to be around chemicals, about the
Is he
chemicals?
talking about humanity in general? Like, like we are, I mean, there's a lot of eco-environmental potential messaging going on here, but like
Yeah.
we as a race got ourselves sick,
Yeah.
we created this mess.
Humanity does suck. Oh,
Yeah, it
so
really does. Never give humanity too much credit. They'll always let you down.
so later they're walking through the field again. Um, Carol looks worse off. Like, her skin looks terrible.
Terrible, yeah.
She's got this oxygen tank.
She
Uh,
looks like she's lost more weight.
she's lost
Really
more weight.
very
Yeah.
frail. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Greg and Rory are helping her move into that bubble. It's basically a
Yeah.
bubble thing. But they're leaving today. They go for a walk, but she has a reaction to him, either his cologne
Cologne, even though he
or the
says, I'm not
detergent.
wearing any cologne.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the important part of it. She's like, it must be your cologne. And he says, I'm not wearing any cologne. And then she says, oh, it must be the detergent then. There's always something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it very well could be. But he hugs her, and then they say goodbye. Then they're having they make the meal, the sharing meal. It's
Mm-hmm.
lasagna, and it's a kind of like a meet cute thing where it's almost like a date. They're like joking around,
Yeah.
and they bring the food out for the group, and then they after dinner they put on the music, and then dancing starts,
Yeah.
and then, like, she starts dancing with her partner. I think it was Chris. And
Yep.
then this is the most awkward dancing. I think there was
Oh,
some really bad dancing in, like, Friday the 13th series. I can't remember which one it was, but
Crispin Glover.
yeah, Crispin
Yeah.
Glover. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing. But yeah, this is like I was watching that dance, and I guess that's what we call the cliche 80s white people dance. Like it was just really like I mean, usually when it comes to when you make a movie, whatever they're listening to is not what we're hearing as the audience. The music's
Right.
put in after. So I don't know if there was music playing when they were doing that dance, or obviously the tempo was completely off. But yeah, it looked that was really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden they surprise Carol with a
Mm.
birthday song and a cake. And
Yeah.
at this point, I'm looking at the clock. I'm like, there's only 8 minutes left in this movie.
Yeah.
What the fuck is happening? I'm starting to get worried because I'm like thinking, fuck,
This is
like,
where the cult kicks in and they're going to
yeah.
sacrifice her or some shit. Something
I,
weird's going on.
I'm thinking, well, we have the Kool-Aid, right? I'm thinking maybe it's in
Yes.
the cake or
Yes.
something, right?
Yeah.
Or the lasagna or something. But
Yeah.
which, damn, just think about that now would have been great. Would have been great.
Yeah.
But I think that's Red State. They made that movie already.
Yeah.
But she gives like they ask her for a speech and she kind of gives this meandering speech. She says she hated herself before she got there, but she's trying to be more positive and educating people. But she just starts rambling.
Yeah.
Then she just stops talking, and then
Um,
they toast to her.
yeah.
So the director said that at this point when he was researching the movie, he was actually talking to people, and this happened to him with one of these people who claimed to have this illness. They were just talking and then just started rambling and then just stopped talking.
Mm.
So he wrote it into the movie. And anyway, they toast to her, and then she walks home with Chris after dinner,
Yeah.
and he's kind of doing that thing where like staying around,
Yeah.
see if he's gonna
Do I
get a
stay?
kiss.
Do I? Yeah.
Yeah, gonna get coffee. Are you gonna invite me in? But she doesn't, and she goes inside. Now we're inside her safe room, and it's kind of shaped like a yurt, like like a
It's an
sphere.
yeah, it's an igloo
Yeah.
basically. Yeah.
And she puts her oxygen mask on, and then the camera slowly zooms in on her.
Yeah.
And then she walks up to the mirror and she says, I love
I
you.
love you.
I really love you. I love you. And then she just stares at us and kind of through us. And then the movie just ends
Mm-hmm.
there. And you could tell like her face looks absolutely like her complexion is terrible. Like
Yeah.
her, her
Yeah.
face
She's
looks
got
sallow. But yeah, that's the end of the movie. So I guess my question to you is, what do you think about that ending?
I don't think she's ever getting out of that home, man. I think what happened to the previous occupant is gonna happen to her. I, I just like there. The thing is, no matter what, it's going to be, is it all in her head as she does to herself, or is it a real reaction, Because she definitely wasn't getting better when she got there. Great that she's starting to love herself, apparently, like that's kind of like, but because that's all she has. But I don't know. I just feel like she's never leaving there. I don't even know if Greg's going to ever come back in the picture. Like there's a lot to left up for the imagination. Um,
Yeah, and I always love when a movie is willing to do that.
yeah.
I don't need things telegraphed for me. I don't need things to be spoon-fed a lot. So I was frustrated,
Mm-hmm.
but also I like when filmmakers challenge themselves and take risks. And this was definitely a risk. This is
Yeah.
definitely a big risk. But ultimately, the film presents no answer for her illness or her predicament. Her condition is given no name in the film, but the director Haynes did confirm that it is a depiction of multiple chemical sensitivity. He also said that Carol's isolation was both the answer and the problem for her.
Mm.
And the ending is highly ambiguous and has created considerable debate among critics and audiences as to whether Carol has emancipated herself or simply traded one form of suffocation for an equally constricting identity as a reclusive invalid. They go on to say this film critic, Julie Grossman, argues in her article, The Trouble with Carol, that Haynes concludes the film as a challenge to traditional Hollywood film narratives of the heroine taking charge of her life, and that Haynes sets Carol up as the victim both of a male-dominated society and also of an equally debilitating self-help culture that encourages patients to take sole responsibility for their illness and recovery.
Hmm.
So there's just, like I said, there's so much to think about in this movie. It's a lot smarter than I am.
And
Um,
me. Yep.
but there's a difference between a movie being bad and a movie just not being what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And this is definitely not a bad movie. This is a great movie, or it's at very least a good movie.
Yeah.
I'm still on the fence whether or not I'm still on the fence whether or not I think it's great or not. But it's a good movie with great writing and great acting. I think Julianne Moore did a great job.
Yeah, this was kind of her big, like, definitely put her on the map. I mean, she more or less, I mean, that was her movie to own. I mean, she's in every scene pretty
Yeah,
much.
yeah, you're
Um,
right. Yeah,
I can say, like, if this movie was in my store, and I do actually have Criterion copies coming in, but I wouldn't place it in the horror movie section, though. Well, it go in the Criterion section, but if I had to pick a genre, I'd probably put it in the drama section. To be honest, more like it was like a dark, atmospheric, brooding drama in my
yeah.
mind.
I think
Like,
for me, what you something you said at the very end here kind of struck me as that's the horror part of it, is that she's never getting out of this place.
yeah, like
That's terrifying.
yeah, like I
So,
think that igloo thing or whatever, that room, that's like the end of end all. And who knows, maybe, I mean, again, we can interpret it any way we want. Maybe she will get better, maybe she'll have a bonding relationship with that guy and
Chris,
stuff. But I just no. I think, like, the more she's physically being altered because of her condition, I think her mind is also lapsing. I'm
yeah,
not saying that her looking at herself in the mirror saying "I love me, I love you, I love you" is healthy or not healthy, but she's definitely on a different plane than when the movie opened up 2 hours earlier.
yeah, yeah,
And they're just there's no sign that she's getting better. Like that's all I got. There was no hope for me at all
yeah.
with her character.
It's like the more she quote unquote gets better, the actually she's just getting worse. So,
Yeah, yeah.
okay, so what we do here now is we rate it out of five upside down crosses, and it's not. It's just, it could change from day to day. Today you might feel it's a 2-star movie. Tomorrow you might think it's a 3.5-star movie. But there's not set in stone. And I do know some people who don't like rating it, but unfortunately, I'm
Mm.
gonna have to put your feet to the fire in this one. But yeah, we do rate it out of five upside down crosses. So what would you give Safe from 1995?
I under the condition that you're going into it not expecting a traditional horror movie per se, like we talked about. As a psychological drama, beautifully shot. I love the score. And I think it captures what the director was going for, like as far as what you're feeling through the character. So I'll give it. Did you have these as well? Like, does that
Yeah,
have to be a
halvesies,
okay?
quartersies.
I'll give it a 3.5
Okay,
for what it is. For what
three
it
and a half.
is.
Okay.
But you really have to be in the mood, the right mood to jump into a movie like this. This is not a casual, like, yeah, I'm going to watch Return of the Living Dead for the 200th time, like, yeah, there's easy movies to watch to digest, and then there's specialty meals, like this is
Yeah.
definitely a specialty meal.
Yeah. Return of the Living Dead, five upside down crosses, by the way. But
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And
but
greatest horror comedy of the '80s ever made.
yeah.
One of my
So
all-time favorites.
for me, I would agree with you. I'm at for everything we've already talked about, I'm at 3.5 upside down crosses for Safe. It's not a fun movie. It's probably not even a movie I would watch again unless my wife
Mm-hmm.
wants to watch it. But I'm glad to have watched it, and I want to see more by Todd Haynes because I haven't seen any of his other movies.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I'm glad to have watched it.
Yeah.
For somebody like me and you, like who's seen almost everything, right? Kind of finding these one-offs or these kind of like on the fringes of whether or not it's horror or not. It's always fun to kind of find these sort of things because I'm not a person who will go back a bunch of times and watch the same movie over and over. I don't have comfort movies.
Oh,
Um,
really?
Yeah, I like obviously Halloween is my favorite movie of all time, but
Mhm.
like, and I watch it on Halloween every year, but like, I'm always trying to find new movies. So
Right.
if I buy it, it's just to have it up on the wall. And
Yeah.
if people are over, I'll throw it on. But comfort movies isn't a thing I do. My comfort is in finding other movies that I like.
That's a good point. For me, it's a different lifestyle, right? Because I'm in my store every day. The
Yeah.
video store always plays about 4 movies a day in the background, so I don't like watching new movies when I'm working. I
Oh
got
yeah,
want
that
to be able to
makes
focus.
sense.
So that's I didn't think of it. That's why I've watched Return of the Dead like 200 times, or Jaws is always on in the background, or
Yeah.
Psycho, or something like that. But yeah.
So speaking of other movies, what is a recommendation you have for a movie in a similar vein? It could be, I mean, we could definitely make it horror since this is a horror podcast, but just a movie that you'd recommend to
Well,
somebody.
ooh, it's a tough one in a similar vein to Safe, because Safe is such uh, again, it if by that description you mean it's not an easy watch. It's something you might only watch once. It's a slow burn. Uh, it's
I
more about like
I
a
have one if you want some more time.
yeah. Which one?
I was thinking Dogtooth.
Yeah, yeah.
So I always forget his name, the
Have you seen
director's
this? I
name.
haven't seen his new movie yet. The Frankenstein thing.
No,
Poor Things.
yeah, no, I
Yeah.
want to check that out. Definitely, probably this weekend. But Yorgos Lanthimos made Dogtooth in 2009, I believe it was. And that actually has some horrific elements to it, but it's like really fucking weird, and some of the elements are are a bit weird, but it's psychological as well.
Yeah.
So I would recommend Dogtooth.
Ooh, okay, I got a couple then. Just because I'm thinking of a female main character and she's going through some shit. One is Raw from
Ooh, yeah,
2017. I
yeah,
think 17, I want to say. Obviously, that director, she went on to make Titane right after, which was fucking awesome and twisted. But
amazing.
Raw, because you have this young lady who's going to go to veterinarian college where her sister already goes, and she comes from a family of vegetarians, and then something happens and she gets a taste for meat, blood, and changes begin going on with her for like her body. And oh baby, it goes places. The other one I was gonna say, now I wasn't a huge fan of this movie, but again, it should be worth one watch anyways. And the similarities, I believe it was called Swallow, and it came out about
Oh yeah, I haven't
three
seen that one.
years ago. It came out during the pandemic, and it's based on a real life condition. This is a really bizarre one of people that eat inanimate objects like batteries and mini light bulbs, and they just can't help themselves. It's really fucking uncomfortable because so it's this female that just keeps eating like nuts. I don't mean nuts, I mean nuts and bolts, like
Oh,
not
okay.
digestible items.
Yeah.
It's really like, yeah, but
Okay.
um yeah, again, the similarities are it's more of a disturbing psychological dark drama dealing with these conditions that are, I guess, documented, but there's no scientific evidence or medical evidence why people do or feel the things they do
Yeah.
with this. Yeah, if that makes sense.
I got a question for you. If in in your shop,
Yeah,
let's say randomly you're just putting up stuff on the shop, would you put safe next to Saltburn? Have you seen Saltburn yet?
I haven't seen Saltburn yet.
Okay.
I've heard a lot of mixed. It's on my
Okay.
watch list.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Then
but
that's fine. Well, I just saw it last week and it's kind of like still in my head. But it's like that sort of thing where it's I don't want to spoil anything, so there, that's great. But yeah, so let's end it there.
okay.
Once again, if you could let everybody know how they can follow you on Instagram.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not the biggest social media guy, but as far as Instagram is my go-to. I love keeping people informed of here's what great movies I'm watching at the video store and movies you should check out or maybe revisit. It's a video store Kev, pardon me. And as far as the store itself, if you're still using the archaic Facebook, there's a group page for my video store. It's the Lobby DVD Shop on White. You can join, and then you're always in the loop of sweet video store nostalgia cinema that's coming in and out of the shop. And it doesn't matter where in the world you live. I mean, being connected on social media to another video store, if nothing else, it might inspire you to search out those movies and or search out a video store in your neck of the woods, because believe it or not, there's still quite a few of us out there. Or if you want to visit my store's page directly, it's thelobbymovies.com. And getting back to our movie that is based out of my store, the last video store, we're hoping that it's going to have some distribution and physical release later this year. So keep an eye out for it. And who knows, it might end up playing a few more festivals down the road in your neck of the woods.
Oh yeah, physical media forever.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much for being on. Kevin and I are going to continue our conversation and the Sunday School Sessions, which is a Patreon exclusive show. If you'd like to support the show, patreon.com/myhorrorconfessional. Thank you everybody for listening, and we will talk to you next week.
Live spooky, die spooky.